Alright, hello everyone. My name is Disc, and in this video we are looking at a 21 lower Karazhan. We are bursting in Volcanic and Tyrannical. So this is a great push week, and it's really fun for priests because we have Mass Dispel. And this is one of the last good push weeks of the expansion. It's real unfortunate that everyone's been lagging this week. Something's wrong with some of the servers. We don't really know what, but thankfully this was a good example of lower without any lag, and I'm playing with my team, or at least 3 of us are a team. And being in comms in lower makes the biggest difference, especially if you can at least coordinate with your tank. And we're about to get going here. Pretty much all of our targets are good for PI, except part of the way through the dungeon I notice our Warlock is not deserving, so it bounces between our hunters. And first pull here is kind of just a cooldown dump. We want to get everything rolling before boss. And as a priest you can fade past that first mob, you don't have to pot. And for this first pull, we definitely want to just cooldown dump. We want to get our spells rolling. So I'm putting a few dots on the strong enemies. There's our PI, Shadow Fiend, Schism, Boon, Nova, Blast, Nova, Nova, Blast. So I slightly favored Nova for the count, Blast, Radiance, Blast for the coverage, and that was our first Boon. And you might notice in the center of my screen is a little number counter. I added that recently to see the stacks of my boon. I think arguably you don't really need to, but I kind of just want to. And mainly it's because if you're trying to play a cancel aura boon, it's nice to see your stack count. So here we are, second pull. We don't really have anything, so we're just going to open with a full round of dots, Schism, and Seer. Paints up, and some more Seer. Oh, yikes. Okay, so that's where the affix almost wiped the group. I was volcanoed during a Mass Dispel cast. That's the worst feeling. But as a reaction, I single dispelled myself just to not die, and we recovered. Good off heals from the Paladin. I don't know what I'd do without a Paladin. I do think Paladins and priests, Discipline priests, pair well, because they got those wogs they can hand out. Okay, so for this, I just want to get Boon rolling and go start the event. So I Schism Boon. My first global is also a Nova, just to get some more stacks. Blast, Radiance, Blast late. Spread all my dots. There's a fresh atonement on the tank, and I exit. So I always want to at least get off my boon before I go start the event. Sue me. I mean, like, I just want to get one more round of boon. I'm not going to skip around a boon there just to start this fucking event. So anyway, this week we have Beautiful Beasts. I don't think there's too much to it. There are a handful of mechanics. It's really helpful if you know. Yeah, looking at the damage meters, our Survival Hunter is on top, and our Marksman Hunter is close second. So PI is going to go to one of them. We'll see what happens. And let's see, what can I talk about here? So I think I do it once in this dungeon. We'll have to see. But the reason I wanted to put a boon counter mid-screen is if I'm already at a 99 stack and half of the group is about to die, there's no reason to not go ahead and cancel aura, get more damage off the eruption, and put boon on back on cooldown just a little bit quicker. So anyway, here we go. First, you just want to make sure you're not being chased, and of course I'm picked first. He bopped it off, that's nice. And this is when I noticed I was a little bit late on PI, so that sucks. But here's our Schism boon. Blast, Nova Nova Blast. Trying to get as many stacks as I can while cleaving off Bablet. And with this guy, you don't want to track him through the fire. It'll increase his speed. However, you can hover your finger on Purge, like right there. And, yep, purged him again. Oop, purged him again. So, yeah, Purge will slow him back down, but your allies should be taking care of the fire on the ground with the water debuff. That's really the only mechanic. And now we're on Luminor. I backload an Atonement. Oh, actually, I do a Radiance. So, Shadow Fiend, Schism, and then you just pump for 9 seconds. And with those water debuffs, you should be taking care of the fire. Looks like the Warlock doesn't know that. And Luminor doesn't do too much. You kind of just want to roll Schism as much as possible, pump as much natural DPS as possible. And there was a slight mistake. Hunter got hit by ground damage, but we got a quick res. I'm taking care of the fire. Now we're on the Cauldron. Let's see, what do I do? So it looks like our Marksman Hunter is doing better damage here. So I think I toss my next PI to him. Let's see what happens now that we're back synced up. And for the last phase with the forks, with Bigwigs I have everything turned off except the Dent Armor. That's honestly the only thing you need to worry about, and you need to get ahead of it. So there's a slightly late PI, but a lot better than the first one. And Nova Nova Blast through just to get the stacks and kill those forks. And for that Dent Armor, I Pain Supped, and I got ahead of it by a couple seconds. The debuff itself is pretty bad, and the front end of it is even worse. So you definitely got to get ahead of it with something. Here comes another Dent Armor. Prelay a Barrier. And we are in Discord together, so we're coordinating this between his cooldowns and mine. When you overlap cooldowns, generally it's bad. It's better if you can stagger. So that's what we're doing here. And yeah, first boss no problem. And for our route, I forget what we do. We've done so many of these. Okay, it looks like a suicide run. So we just kill ourselves, reset to the front. And I believe we're prepping for Moroes, which I kind of think is the only bottleneck. It really, really demands you play your cooldowns perfectly, but we have quite a bit of trash before we get there. So all we're doing now is we have 9 minutes until Lust is ready again. So the name of the game is just collect as much Shrouded as you can in 9 minutes. And we're starting the dining room, or whatever you call this. So scanning my available buffs, we have Fiend, we're going to have Boon. Send a fresh Atonement right before he drops. Make sure I'm targeting one of these stronger enemies. Schism, Boon. First global is a Nova again, trying to bank on stacks before they die. And that was a really aggressive Boon. I didn't refresh any Atonement, so I just wanted all the damage and had a really good peek there. So here goes the Shadow Fiend, followed by Schism. Mine's here. And with those attacks, you can shield to get ahead of the damage, but non-fortified, that's not my play. And that was a beautiful defensive penance proc right into the tank. His health was a little bit low, and as an opener, neither of us had anything, so just some extra heals for good measure. Always fade to be off the aggro table. I'm opening with a couple dots, a couple atonements, and I don't have Schism yet, but I have to get into Boon. So I open with Nova Blast, Blast, Dispel, Blast, and that was a pretty good boon. Refreshing a couple of atonements, Schism, Mind Seer as much as possible, and things are getting out of hand here, so I go into my first defensive Rapture. I'm using Grid 2 to monitor where my absorb values are, just farming really thick shields. And I would have to watch this back, but that chain pull might have been accidental. I'm not too sure. But I think I remember all of us saying like, oh woof, that was kind of hard. So I can't remember if it was intentional, but definitely drop all your cooldowns. Feather the tank. Let's see, what do I have? I have Boon, I have PI. There's our PI on the Marksman. And I'm opening with a lot of Novas, just because a lot of these guys are going to die. And I was already at a 99 stack, so I went ahead and canceled there a little bit early, just to make sure it would hit the maximum number of mobs. And this pack is almost dead here. They were picking on me a little bit there at the end. And next pull, I don't have any cooldowns on the rip except barrier. Let's see what I do here. Target the servant. He's the healthiest enemy, the biggest threat. Schism Seer. And whenever you have to sidestep a volcano, a penance is the better spell to press because it'll spread your dot. A little more DPS that way. And did not need a barrier. All cooldowns are back up. We're just farming a little bit of Shrouded from down here, killing 5 minutes a time. I forget what happens. Let's see. Fade. Do not want to be on the aggro table. Spread a dot with penance. Schism Boon. Blast. Nova Blast. Oh, and it looks like I blast Shadow Fiend Blast. Yeah, that's a total dump there. I just wanted to get Shadow Fiend rolling. A better play would be dump Shadow Fiend before Boon, so it's uninterrupted. But I kind of just want to get him rolling. He got full value, so it's okay. Alright, and going into this next pull, it is our Shrouded pull, and it is kind of big. So we definitely want to drop PI as optimally as possible. And I don't have Boon, so as a defense, I'm getting all my dots out. There's our PI on the Marksman, because he was the only one ready. And I got a 2-stack, I noticed, so I wall. You definitely have to give yourself some direct healing there. And I'm just mind searing as much as I can. And with another 2-stack, it was really nice. I had a sacrifice. And that bomb, I think the hunter might have backpedaled a little too close to it, and the effect clipped him. So that's a rip. Arguably, I could have stood a little further away, but I wasn't moving with that mechanic. I was standing still. But we have a little bit of more trash. Boon just came available, so we're definitely going to drop it. But as far as our 3 minutes, like our Pain Sap and Barrier, we are trying to bank those for boss. And for this group, I believe we take it as a 2-pack because they They give a really bad debuff when, if pulled with larger groups, it can get out of hand. So we're just pumping through here. You know, arguably, with 3 minutes to lust, I could have used all my cooldowns once more. But yeah, there is no reason to use it here. And I use Boon on the next pull, I believe, because it's kind of larger. Yeah, even though boss is coming up, I think I use Boon there. Open with Fade. Just definitely want to be off that aggro table. Removing a couple dots. Then Schism, Boon. Blast, Nova, Nova, Blast. Trying to get as much CDR here as possible. And after the Schism ends, I favor Nova. Just trying to get that CDR. Mass Dispel there. I think I was healing the first couple seconds of the bursting, and then I Mass Dispel late. And this is the last pull before boss. I think we're all just waiting a couple seconds for cooldowns to return. And he has to go upstairs to grab. But yeah, looking at the lust timer, 2 more minutes. Our hunters are tied neck and neck, so those are going to be my PI targets for sure. Feather, because I can. Fade, so I'm not on the aggro. Target the retainer, obviously the strongest mob there. Backload and Atonement. Schism Boon. And for this, I definitely want to favor Nova. The most important thing here is to get all the CDR, since boss is next. And that attendant's pretty healthy. Let's see, I think I Schism, yeah. Schism Seer off the healthiest mob. Mass Dispel followed by a single Dispel. Definitely always use a single Dispel to your advantage. It's quite often a Mass Dispel will miss someone, and if you're quick on the pickup with your single, you can still get your full party. And just killing off this last mob. So our strategy with Moroes is we lust, pull Moroes +2. And the really important thing here is that you get a perfect boon without any interruptions, because you need as much CDR as possible. So the first Garrote will go on me. I open with dots, and I shield myself before the Garrote hits me. Yep, so I'm shielded and atoned. Here's the first Garrote. PI is out. Then I Shadowman myself and shield the tank to lock those atonements together. And Schism Boon. We get our preferred rotation. Blast Nova. And we want to land as many hits as possible here. And that is all the healing you need for yourself. You get as much CDR as possible. And on the backside of Boon, I walled. And we had it totally taken care of with a bop from the Paladin, which comes in real handy. Here's my Shadow Fiend Schism. Wanted to get the lady down pretty quickly. Also, I was missing mana, so not a bad idea to use it. And also go ahead and Paints Up myself. That's a pretty full Garrote. It's a great spell to mitigate that mechanic. And I have a Weaker here too. You'll see when the coat check goes out on the tank. That is a priority dispel. So as soon as coat check goes out, you have to dispel it really quickly. And I have a little weak aura that highlights his unit frame. So here comes our second boon, because we had a perfect first round. I atoned the people with the Garrote, Boon, Nova Blast. Blast, single dispel blast for the coat check. And we're in a good place. Always want to keep the dot refreshed. Try and refresh it in the pandemic window when it's under 5 seconds. And thankfully, if you use wall early enough in a fight, you'll get it back again. So there's my second wall with the garrote, which is great. Second PI goes back to the Marksman because he's really killing it. And I flooded a defensive penance into myself because I just wasn't playing around. And to top off the fight, I go into a Rapture, maximizing my globals using Grid 2. It's just really helpful if you can see your absorbed values growing from left to right. I think they should kind of operate the same way a health bar does. So yeah, Grid 2, keeping maximum shields on the garrote. And you can always prioritize yourself last with Rapture. You should be running Charitable Soul, which will return some of that shield to yourself. So prioritize others first. You can really maximize Rapture there. Make sure you're getting coat check off very quickly. And that was a very smooth Moroes. Okay, we have no cooldowns here. I forget what happens. Schism Seer. So these guys are still pretty healthy. I didn't even have Schism, but I wanted to get a boon rolling just for the CDR. No point in holding it. Schism on the backside. Mass Dispel. I'm getting a little bit low mana, which is scary. So I Shadow Fiend, refresh Atonements, and I trail in the Schism late. Shadow Fiend is 15 seconds to Schism's 9, so there's a little bit of a window for error. So you can cast Shadow Fiend, refresh a couple of Atonements, and then Schism late, and it's fine. That's actually the preferred play almost everywhere. I think we see that on the last boss. Fade. There's our PI. Oh, there goes the PI. Ouch. So here's Boon, Schism Boon. Yeah, I think the hunter, the survival hunter stood in a charge, and we lost a 100% value PI, which really hurt. Whenever you get a mechanic, it's not a bad idea to wall, which is what happened there. And I just Mind Seer. When it's a group of 3, I Mind Seer. If it's anything less, I single target. And since I had a mechanic there, I went ahead and single dispelled myself, saved the Mass Dispel mana. And we don't really need Paints Up on the Rip for the boss. So I do Paints Up here, which gives me 8 seconds just to dot the group. And I have no mana, which is... we're not in a good place. Schism Seer is pretty cheap on mana. I'm using my penance to spread dots, trying to get as much out of my mana as possible. And I just had to go for Boon. Not a problem really, but no Schism, Nova Blast. Still got pretty good value. Helped us get through the pull. Single Dispel, spam Drink. And yeah, so here we have Attumen the Huntsman, or whatever his name is. I don't think the mechanics are too difficult, but you do need to know them. Super easy to wipe here. but I think we played it alright. And on this first round with Midnight, definitely get a Schism rolling, just pumping as much DPS as possible. And as far as bigwigs, I'm only tracking the Mighty Stomp, because that's the only thing I need to heal, and I just gotta be careful not to get my spells interrupted, so. There's PI on our Marksman. And for the shared suffering, our tank does opt to handle it himself. So through Discord, we're staggering our cooldowns together. And for this one, he called Barrier. So you definitely want to pre-cast it. So another really important spell to track with bigwigs is the shared suffering. That's really the only thing I track. And then for this phase, when the horses come out, Boon is never a bad idea here. Helps push the phase and gives you extra mobility, which is very helpful. So Nova Nova Blast there. And I always like to stand in melee even if I don't have Boon, because it's relatively safe. I think the horses spawn at like 20 yards range, and if you're not careful they can spawn on you. So staying in melee is not a bad idea anyway. And here comes Shared Suffering, and the play this time is I'm going to Rapture him. And this is a pretty different type of Rapture for me. So I pretty much waste the whole thing and just cast 2. I went ahead and covered him on the front end of the attack and then refreshed it after the attack. But no one else needed healing, and I didn't need to spend the mana. So you can use Rapture just for 2 globals, and I think that's a very valid play right there. We didn't want to use a big cooldown, and Rapture was enough, and I think it even crit. Yeah, and this hunter's max range him. So as a range, you can just kind of like stand back and not play most of the mechanics here. PI went to our Marksman again. He doesn't have to dodge anything. He's in a much safer place. So he can just stand there and pump. And for that Shared Suffering, we went for the Pain Sup, but we killed the boss before it went off. So here is really scary because he enrages the last phase. But that Mighty Stomp, you can just LOS it. And boss is down. Did we have a death? I forget. We might have had a death, but it wasn't a deal breaker. And then where are we headed next? I forget. We're headed upstairs. Grip. Always nice to grip the person in the back. And yeah, in a second like this, you always want to scan your available buffs. We have Boon, we have Fiend, we have Barrier, because you don't want to reach for something and it not be there. So it's kind of good to always keep checking them to know what you have going into a pull. This is a pretty big pull. Uh-oh. Fade. Targeting the stronger mob here. Schism Boon. First global is a Nova. I'm trying to get as many sacks as I can here. That was a really good Boon. And I go ahead and Barrier. And in this 10-second window, I'm refreshing a couple of dots on my stronger enemies. Schism Seer. And I think things got a little bit out of hand here. Yeah, I was getting a little bit greedy with the Mind Seer. I wasn't expecting the tank to go down, but like looking back on this, in that moment I should have just been straight Shadowmend spamming until he leveled out again. So that was probably a bad judgment call on my part. Also, I think the hunter should have popped. The marksman hunter should have popped, and we should have had another round of PI there. That would have helped the pull. But yeah, I definitely needed to be shadow mending there. So that's hard to see, but sometimes it happens. Yeah, you can't get too carried away with mines here because it doesn't heal that much. Not like a shadow mend would. So yeah, we just got like these thick guys left. So I definitely want to open with all my dots. There is our PI on the survival hunter. And I backloaded an atonement on the tank before Schism Boon, Blast, Nova Nova Blast. Just landing as many hits as I can here. Spread my dot out of the boon. Mine's here. So when a mob is dying like that, I like to penance the one that's about to die because it kind of like preserves their dot, spreads it to the more healthier one. Got another round of Schism just to finish them off. And this is an Invis Gauntlet. I lead with Fade. That way I can pot late. So it kind of gives me a little bit of a cushion. And the hunter took my feather, so it was a good thing I faded. And I think this pull got a little bit bigger than intended, but we managed. Yeah, so I go for a pain sup just because we have to. I wall because I'm getting attacked. Open with a couple of dots, and just gotta get into boon. So Schism, boon, blast, Nova Nova blast. And at that point we had leveled out a little bit. I didn't refresh atonement on the tank. And we're good to go. So here's our last boss, the Maiden of Virtue. You don't want to stand with your allies. One of the attacks will chain. There's our first PI on the survival. And in this first phase, you can definitely get a round of Schism. So Schism and pump DPS. Gripping your ally out of the mechanic is always a nice play. And for bigwigs, I'm only tracking Mass Repentance. That's really the only thing I think you need to track, to be honest. I mean, everything else is visual. You don't, like this mechanic, I don't need to track the timer, you can see it. But Mass Repentance, here it comes. I put fresh atonements on the whole group. I'm watching the cast bar to step into the puddle late. Here we have Lust, Schism, Boon. And this is our preferred rotation, so we have Nova Blast, which is a piece of cake for the damage going out. And it's nice to stack those together. You don't want to stack them like middle of the room. Put them on the wall. And Mass Repentance is a little bit a ways, so you want to get another round of Schism. Just pump as much DPS as possible. And Mass Repentance is coming in 5. My only note for the tank would be to have the boss closer to the puddle. But I want to get atonements out before the Repentance. The best play here would be to barrier before the Repentance. But I barrier on the backside. Refresh atonements. There's my Shadow Fiend Schism. And then I just heal. So usually you would want to attack during a Schism, but in a case like that, I let the Shadow Fiend get all the Schism he wants, and I have to Shadow Man farm atonements. There's our second PI on the Hunter. Oh wow. Almost died with it. And boss is almost dead, just getting another round of Schism in here, pumping as much DPS as possible. I probably could have held it over there, but yeah, boss is almost dead. But yeah, I really love this dungeon. It took me a while to get comfortable with it, but I think with the right weak auras, knowing where your dispels are, having a team in comms, there's a lot you can do to help yourself. And I hope in this video you saw some of the methods I use and some of the approaches I use, and rotations and all that stuff. But I'm kind of excited for Dragonflight. I've not thought about it too much. I am going to miss Boone. I do hope to get the other dungeons out. I know I've been favoring the older dungeons, but I want to get some of the newer ones out, get some fresh content. But I think this is probably all I'm going to have for this week. But if you have any questions, please ask. I think I'm pretty good about answering anything someone asks. But yeah, until next time, guys, Disc out.